Welcome to the Geektherapy Radio Podcast. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. And today, my mental musings, what I'm geeking out about, in one way or the other, because I'm very skeptical. I'm a skeptical geek today. And not just today, ever since I've heard of 5G. For those unfamiliar with 5G cellular data, data connection, I don't know what else to call it. It's basically, we're on 4G LTE now, and the next generation of wireless communication is going to be 5G. I'll explain it briefly what it is. Don't confuse 5G with your new 5G smartphone for a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi signal. That's not what it is. 5G, I guess, just stands for fifth generation of mobile data. So your 5 gigahertz router, your 5G router, 5 gigahertz router, that just means that the spectrum that it operates in, the electromagnetic spectrum, is 5 gigahertz, within that range or close to it. 5G, in terms of mobile data, is 5th generation, and it operates between the bandwidth of roughly 20 gigahertz and 100 gigahertz. Roughly in between there. Throw a dart. It's just between that spectrum. It's very, very high up in the electromagnetic spectrum. So between 20 gigahertz and 100 gigahertz. So 5 to 20 times higher frequency than your 5 gigahertz router, which brings me to this in my skepticism and my weariness, I guess, of it all. What happens when you go even 1 or 2 rooms away from your 5 gigahertz router? What happens to your 5 gigahertz signal? And remember, we're just talking about the 5 gigahertz. We're not talking about 20 gigahertz or 100 gigahertz. We're talking about the 5 gigahertz signal that your router's throwing out there. It goes away. If you put a couple of walls between you and your 5 gigahertz router, your phone or laptop automatically connects back to the 2.4 gigahertz network, because the lower frequency has more power to punch through walls and obstacles. So if a 5 gigahertz signal in your house is already super finicky, forget putting a Wi-Fi router up in your attic or whatever, which you really shouldn't do, but in an upstairs room, and then you go down in your basement. If you're listening somewhere with the basement, there's no way you're getting 5 gigahertz down there. Absolutely no way it's punching through all those floors. And if it does, it's extremely weak, unreliable signal. But 2.4 gigahertz, that has a lot less problem punching through walls. You need to get behind a lot more walls before you start seeing 2.4 gigahertz dropping off. So 5G mobile data starts at about 20 gigahertz, which means it's going, compared to your 5G network, I guess it's 4 times, not 5 times. It's going to have 4 times a harder time, even at just 20 gigahertz, punching through walls. Here's what's actually happening with 20 gigahertz to 100 gigahertz. It is being absorbed by the actual water vapor in the air. It is super, super hard to throw a 20 to 100 gigahertz signal any amount of length or distance through the air at a power that's not going to boil people's brains, basically. Will it boil brains? Who knows? But at a safe power level for animals and plants and humans. So the way the 5G network has to roll out, because of physics, the only way around this would be to go and knock on God's door and say, hey, you know what? You want to redo some things with the universe here so that... And if you're atheist, just disregard this. I'm just making a point here, just suggesting that the point is that physics... we can't change physics. We can only work within physics to meet our needs. So to get the 20 gigahertz to 100 gigahertz 5G spectrum to work, that means that they have to put a node or a repeater, a 5G repeater, every couple hundred feet. They have to put a 5G repeater on. If you're downtown, they have to put a repeater on every single block. every single corner of a block, they have to put a 5G repeater, because as soon as you go out of line of sight of a 5G repeater, you will lose the 5G network. If you go behind a window, you will lose the 5G network. If you go into a building, around a brick corner, whatever, if you go behind a piece of paper, the 5G signal is going to be severely deteriorated. If you are 100 feet away, or some arbitrary number, let's say you're standing there and the 5G network has rolled out and you're standing on a halfway down the block and you got a nice strong 5G signal. If it starts raining, you might lose the signal. If you very well could lose the signal. If it's too humid, the signal will suffer. If it's foggy, the signal will drop. 20 gigahertz to 100 gigahertz has a super hard time even getting through the water vapor and water droplets in the air. So that means to make the 5G network work, they have to put these repeaters everywhere. And I mean everywhere. You have to always be within a football field at most, really, in the real world, of a 5G repeater to get a 5G network. The infrastructure they're going to have to lay out to make this work is going to be gargantuan and expensive. That's just the truth. That's reality. That's from these communication companies, AT&T and Verizon and so forth. That's their own words. It's going to be a massive rollout. It's such a massive rollout and requires so much to be done that it's creating a nightmare between the FCC and private and cities. Between the FCC, which is a federal organization, and states and cities and townships and even neighborhoods. Because remember what I said here, for 5G to work in your neighborhood, that means the HOA has to be okay with putting an ugly repeater or a camouflaged repeater everywhere in your neighborhood. Everywhere. Several on one street. They have to put them somewhere, up on telephone poles or whatever. They've got to put them somewhere. And the only way that this is going to happen is if the FCC steps in and infringes on homeowners' rights, so to speak, or cities' rights or states' rights a little bit to make sure that they can roll this out. It's going to require the eyesore. It's going to require the investment. It's going to require a rollout on a scale that we haven't even fathomed yet. A regular 4G LTE cell phone tower, you can put those up every few miles or so. With 5G, it's going to be every few hundred feet, effectively, if you want to be within the 5G network and see the benefits. It's going to be super duper hard to roll out 5G when Mother Nature itself, when the water in the air itself, the humidity in the air itself, drastically impacts the quality of your service. Now, let's say you're 10 feet from a repeater. They put a repeater in every single home. They put a repeater, I would say the attic, but it can't punch through walls, so it's going to have to be in every room. They're going to have to figure something out about that. They're going to be everywhere. But I'm just saying, let's just say you're within a few feet of a 5G repeater or a 5G node. The download speeds and upload speeds, just the bandwidth you're going to get out of this is staggering. Gigabit doesn't even do it justice. The speeds are gigabit plus. That means 1 billion. There's a lot of you out there that don't have gigabit Ethernet coming into your house through the cable, through a wire. You don't have gigabit. It's out and it's available. I'm just saying most people don't have it. 5G will make it so that if you're within a eye line of a 5G node, that you're going to get gigabit plus speeds. That has really cool that's just going to be awesome. I don't know how else to put it than that. If they roll out 5G in a way that is not going to ruffle too many feathers or be too obnoxious, the benefits are going to be great. But that's the debate here. Are the benefits going to outweigh the growing pains of implementation? I don't know. What do you think? Once again, what information that I share that you could expand on? What information do you think that I got wrong? Let me know. Geektherapy at iHeartMedia.com. Geektherapy at iHeartMedia.com. Geektherapy at iHeartMedia.com. So I'm skeptical. Overall, what this all boils down to is I'm just skeptical of 5G. I think we're a long ways away from the average Joe Schmo being on a 5G network. And I will mention right now, real quick, for those of you who don't know, AT&T advertising their 5GE network. Your phone now comes with 5GE. That's not. And AT&T is actually in hot water and being dragged over the coals for this, for it's basically false advertising. It's misleading. It's still 4G LTE like we have. It's just better and a little faster, but it's not true 5G. It's using existing 4G LTE bandwidth, and they're just calling it 5GE or 5G evolution, but it's not 5G at all. It's not even close to 5G in terms of technology and bandwidth and spectrum of the frequency ranges. It's not 5G at all. So don't go into a cell phone shop. Is this compatible with AT&T's 5GE? Well, yeah. Every cell phone has 4G LTE. That's what it is right now. But they just brand it as 5GE because AT&T is pushing hard for 5G to roll out. So they're just trying to familiarize people, I guess, with the term 5G. It's a thin veil. It's trickery. But anyways, thanks for listening to Geek Therapy Radio Podcast today. Be good to yourselves and others. Please know that you're worthy of love, and being loved and giving love and receiving love. You are worthy of love, period. We're all geeks about something. Embrace your inner geek, and I'll catch you in the next one.